App State enters a new era under Dowell Logans, and it's going to be interesting to see how they turn things around. And today we take a deep dive into the Mountaineers to see what we should expect from them in 2025. A 5-6 season last year saw Sean Clark hit the door, and you're going to see a team that is in uncertain times. And we haven't seen this in a while because of the success we've seen under multiple coaches. And the fan base is trying to figure out, how do we get back to that point? This is a team that was a consistent winner. And the last few years, we saw ups and downs, and it was finally time to move on. And now you bring in a new coach that can hopefully help this program even more and get them back to the point where they're winning 9-10 games a year. Now, a big thing that they did was bring in multiple transfers that are going to take over both offensively and defensively. You lose quite a bit of talent, specifically at the skill positions. Offensively, you lose 3 wide receivers that made a huge impact last year. You also lose a couple offensive linemen. Your starting quarterback goes to UCLA and then ultimately lands at Tennessee. You lose a couple of big name defensive players, including Santana Hopper, Nate Johnson. You're going to have to find some big time players that can replace them. Now, they did go out in the transfer portal and bring in quite a bit of talents, so you feel that they at least have options. The running back position will be an interesting one to pay attention to. Rashad Dubinion comes in from Arkansas. Khalifa Keith comes in from Tennessee. So you address that position. Davion Dozier is going to be an interesting player to watch at wide receiver. The wide receiver position, I think, is still going to be really exciting despite the departures you have. JJ Cole was a nice addition at quarterback. We don't know what we're going to get from him, but we'll talk more about that position. It's a very important position for this team. You also brought a number of guys in that don't fit on this list, but the defensive side of the ball sees a couple of big name cornerbacks come in. Emory Floyd is going to be one to pay attention to. Same with Jaden McBurrows. You also bring in Nehemiah Chandler from Georgia Tech, Cameron Fleming from Virginia Tech, and Christian Conyer from Coastal Carolina. So that's secondary. You brought in a number of players that are going to step up and potentially compete for a starting spot right off the bat. So pretty good job overall by App State and this new coaching staff. This coaching staff did a good job of identifying what do we need to fix, what positions are we going to need help with, and how do we get them to a point where we can get back to winning football games. And one of the biggest names that they added via the transfer portal is quarterback AJ Swan. And AJ Swan is going to be a really interesting player to watch for this team. When you look at what he did at Vanderbilt 2 and 3 years ago, that's a guy who's playing with a ton of confidence, takes a chance on himself, and transfers to LSU. Now, he probably could have gone to other Power 4 schools or somewhere like that, but he ultimately decides that he wants the best chance of starting. App State gives him a great chance for that. You join a former SEC offensive coordinator in Logans, who's taken over as the head coach. I assume as of right now, he's going to be the play caller. I'm not really sure how that's going to work, or if he's going to hire somebody. I haven't seen anything yet, but AJ Swan should be a really interesting player to watch because his time at LSU didn't play very much at all. So we don't really know what he could have done at LSU, but we do know that his time at Vanderbilt should make App State fans pretty excited. I think that he has tremendous talent. He has the ability to move the ball down the field, and I don't think we've tapped into his potential yet of how good he can actually be. He is a very talented passer. Again, if you go back and look at what he did at Vanderbilt, you saw the flashes of what he can do. And with the wide receivers that he'll throw to this year, you feel like he has a good situation on his hands. He's going to be in a great spot, and he has the ability to make plays for this team. And the wide receivers will help him out. The tight end position is very interesting as well. Behind him, we talked about JJ Cole. JJ Cole is another guy who Iowa State was super thrilled to get him to commit to the Cyclones. They're really excited about what he was capable of doing, and it didn't work out. Rocco Beck's emergence could have affected that, so he transfers. I think he's going to be a really interesting player in this system. Billy Wiles comes back, only attempted one pass, which was picked off. So we don't really know what he could be in this offense. It's a new offense, so it's kind of wide open right now. But AJ Swan should be the starter. The backup position is probably where things get a little bit more unclear. The running back position is going to be super deep. I think this is going to be one of the better groups in the Sun Belt. Kanye Roberts entered the transfer portal at one point, decided to come back. 332 yards last year, 1 touchdown. He will be a guy that has a bigger role in this offense. You know, you lose Monty Marshall and Anderson Castle. So the running back position is open for a new starter. Now, Rashad Dubinion is a guy who Arkansas was really excited for, and in his multiple years with the Razorbacks did show some signs of greatness. So he's another guy that could be really fun to watch. Last year only played 8 games, 335 yards and 2 touchdowns, also caught 16 passes for 122 yards. After that, maybe Khalifa Keith is going to get in. He was a guy that I think some people thought could have potential in Tennessee's rushing attack. Obviously, other guys stepped up in a big way. Dylan Sampson was the go-to guy, and you had plenty of interesting depth in guys like Deshaun Bishop. So he transfers to App State, and they're more than happy with that. Maybe Jalen Calhoun, a young guy, could step up as well. But this is a group that has good depth. They're just looking to identify that running back one and who's going to take the majority of the carries in 2025. The wide receiver position, like I talked about before, has a ton of potential. Now you're looking to replace quite a bit of production. Christian Horn, Mekhi Jackson, and Caden Robinson produced a ton for this team last year, and they were very good. A big reason why Joey Aguilar had so much success is because his wide receivers were so good. Dalton Stroman gets his opportunity to be the top guy for this offense. He is someone who a while ago was compared to Randy Moss at one point with his abilities. That's how good he is. A good frame at 6'4", 205 pounds, has the ability to make incredible catches, stretch the defense vertically, and make big plays. He is someone that I expect to get more targets, and he'll be really fun to watch in this offense. 20 catches last year for 307 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think that the sky is the limit for him as long as we see the consistency and he gets those opportunities. William Fowles is back. He should take on a bigger role as well. Another nice frame at 6'3", 205 pounds. Just less production than we saw. But again, when you had those 3 guys, they were going to take the majority of the catches. So you're going to have to find guys that can step up. Jane Barnes comes in from Austin Peay, had over 1,000 yards last year and 19 touchdowns, average 18.7 yards per catch. He is someone that could be really interesting in the slot. He is someone who is a little bit on the smaller side at 5'8", 165 pounds, but someone who can do a lot of damage in the short to intermediate routes. So that's a good balance, if you ask me. You have 2 big guys that can stretch the field. You have a smaller guy in Barnes that can dice up a defense up the middle or in those short to intermediate routes. I think that's a great combination. You also have some untapped potential coming in from the transfer portal. Jackson Greer comes in from Boise State. Davion Dozier is going to come in from Arkansas. Chris Lawson played in 4 games last year, but relatively unproven as well. So you have some guys that could step up and be rotational pieces. Again, I think every wide receiver position is pretty much wide open. I do expect Stroman to take one of those spots, but there are guys that are going to push him and the others for those reps, for those opportunities. So it's going to be good competition, and bringing in talent like that to behind them is going to make them even better as well. The tight end position, kind of similar to the backups for the wide receivers, or really just the wide receivers as a whole, a relatively unproven group. Kanan Hamlet is 6'4", 245 pounds, had 4 catches last year. 2 of them went for touchdowns. Isaiah Cummings comes in from Louisville. He's another guy that we haven't really seen what he's capable of doing, but this could be a really exciting opportunity for him to showcase his talent. And then Jared Gibble played in 5 games last year, another guy that could step up and potentially play a big role. And this is a pass offense that was really good last year, but you're in a new system. You're in a new offense, and you need to find who's going to fit that offense really well. So if you're thinking that one guy is going to step up and be better than the others, right now I don't know how definitively you can say that about a lot of these guys. That being said, it's still a really exciting time. You have plenty of turnover. You have plenty of new faces you need to get to know, but that's part of the process. And it may not be the best year for App State right off the bat. Maybe it is, but it may not be. That's okay. I think that you have to give your new coach time to fix the program. And obviously, what they were doing before wasn't working. They need to identify opportunities to get better. And part of that is bringing in talent and figuring out who is going to play where. The offensive line also fits that description. There are 3 new starters that will be coming in to take over, and it'll be interesting to see how they gel. You will also have backups that come with various levels of experience. Tyreek Poindexter is going to be an interesting one. Transfers in after having 26 games of experience, had 12 starts last year. Opposite of him at the other tackle position, Shamar Jackson from New Mexico State. 17 games, 9 starts last year. You're looking at 2 tackles that are looking to prove themselves and not your prototypical size for tackles. Both are 6'3". Jackson comes in at 305. Poindexter comes in at 325. The other new face is Will Flowers from Valdosta State, a guy who's looking to show that he can compete at the FBS level, and started all 14 games for Valdosta State last year. Making that jump is going to be really interesting. Again, when you raise your game to that kind of level, you need to make sure that your abilities match that. And playing the center position with a new quarterback is going to take some time as well. So we'll see what happens there. The 2 returning guys, Griffin Scroggs had a up and down year last year, 10 games, 5 starts. Jaden Ramsey is really interesting. I think that he is someone who could potentially be really exciting at right guard. He is someone that has a ton of potential to be an all-conference player in 2025. The depth behind them is where things get a little bit uncertain. Trent Ramsey comes in from Cal. He'll be one of the tackle positions. He could potentially start depending on how things go. Again, a lot of this is somewhat uncertain because of all the new faces. At guard, Lance Williams comes in from Virginia Tech. A name to keep an eye on that I think could potentially start over Jackson or Poindexter is Luke Burgess. Luke is going to be a guy who comes in with great size, 6'8", 315 pounds. Only played in 2 games in his career, 1 game last year, but someone who some people think could step up and play a big role. Danny Stevens is the other guard that doesn't have a ton of experience, but is going to be part of that. And Michael Murata comes back, I should say, and will be an interesting player. That's a position at center that could be either one of those guys, and we'll see what happens there. But you have plenty of new competition for the guys that return. You also have those new faces that are looking to prove themselves, some of them coming from a level below the FBS level. So we'll see what happens with that group, but competition is only going to make this team better. Competition is only going to improve that unit, and that offense has a ton of exciting pieces that could make this team even better. If they're looking for one area where they need to improve, you probably look at the defense and think we need this to be a better group. Fortunately for them, they do return quite a bit of returning experience, and not necessarily saying that that's an automatic indicator that this team will be better, but they at least have guys that are ready to play and have experience playing at this level. Thomas Davis and Sean Collins are going to be 2 of the more interesting players on the edge in the Sun Belt. Those are 2 guys that are proven disruptors. Collins actually entered the transfer portal before withdrawing his name, and he's back. It's going to be interesting. They both can be disruptive. They both can be explosive, and they are going to need that. This is a group that statistically wasn't great last year, and it was a big reason why they struggled. They're looking for those guys up front to take a big step. Same thing with Nick Campbell up the middle. He is someone that could have a huge impact on this team, but he needs to take that step. He needs to show that he can handle his new role. Otherwise, you're going to look for guys like Garrison Butler from Cincinnati to take over his spot. Joseph Barkole, Nigel Cooper, and Malik Berry. Malik Berry is someone who I think they're really excited about. I think they found a diamond in the rough, and he is someone that could be really exciting for that defensive end position, someone who can make disruptive plays. Again, with Davis and Collins, you feel like you have 2 pretty good stars, but Berry is a guy to keep an eye on, someone who comes in from Pittsburgh State, has to prove that he can elevate his game to this level, prove that he can handle playing at this level, and that's going to help a group that, they finished 59th against the pass. Part of that had to do with getting to the quarterback, being disruptive. So you have guys that can do that. There's some of them are just taking on bigger roles than they did last year. The secondary is also pretty good, so that kind of helps, but everything starts up front. It's also going to help a group of linebackers that are going to look different than they did last year. You bring in Brayshawn Littlejohn from Missouri, a guy who didn't play a ton with the Tigers, only had 6 tackles last year, but they're really excited about what he can do at the outside linebacker position on the edge. Kyle Arnholt had 55 tackles last year, 2 tackles for loss. He is clearly the leader of this group, clearly the most experienced for this team. Colton Ferries is going to be another interesting player to watch at linebacker, steps into a new role. You also bring in a transfer in Brooks Juracek, who could play if you're looking for someone to step up. Jaden Bethea is coming in as a redshirt sophomore. I think they're excited about what he can do. Kevin Abrams for Wayne, 9 tackles last year, 1 tackle for loss. So you have guys that don't have a ton of experience, but they're looking to identify which one of them has the most potential, which one of them could make this team better. And the linebacker position is probably going to be one that's under the spotlight for quite a bit this season. Quite a bit because of what the guys up front have going on. They have plenty of experience. They have the ability to make plays, and it's up to the linebackers to step up as well. You have guys that are coming in that are new to this program, and everybody's kind of new in a way because of the new system they're putting in, or whether they're learning a new system and learning the new university. It'll be interesting to see how this linebacker position stacks up, because this is probably the weakest line or level of this defense. So you're going to need some time to sort out who's going to be who's going to be our leader, who's going to be the guy that makes the plays. Those are things that are going to dictate how successful this team is. And with a group in front of them and behind them, you feel pretty confident. It just comes down to, can they also make plays to make this a good collective unit? We talked about that secondary. They do go through quite a bit of change as well, but they do return some really nice pieces. When you look at the cornerback position, Jaden McBurrows comes in from Michigan, but it's not guaranteed to start. Christian Conyer is someone who I think has proven that he can compete in the Sun Belt. He is another guy that could potentially take over as the starting cornerback. Emery Floyd is a guy who comes in from another SEC school. You know, he follows Logan's from South Carolina. He is another guy that could play a role as well. Ethan Johnson is the experienced returner of that group, but again, every position is going to be up for grabs. There's competition at every position. So the cornerback position could look very different than what I'm projecting right here. Jordan Favors and DJ Burks make the safety position a lot more solidified than the corners. Favors actually entered the transfer portal before coming back. That's a nice get for this team, be able to get him to come back. DJ Burks, very experienced with 58 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. We talked about a couple of guys before. Cameron Fleming comes in and Nehemiah Chandler. They both come in from the ACC. Miles Farmer returns. That's another guy that could take a step and play a bigger role in 2025. The nickelback position is very interesting. I think that's very much up for grabs. Elijah McCantos is going to be the starter right now to me. Dylan Haas is going to be a guy that pushes him for time as well. But you could see some rotation. You could see guys moving around. Again, with a new staff, I don't think anybody's necessarily solidified in their role. There are a couple of guys that I think are solidified. You know, you look at someone like DJ Burks and Jordan Favors, you probably have them slotted at safety, but also maybe you do need to move them around. Maybe you need to give them opportunities to showcase their talent at different positions. Maybe the previous staff misevaluated them at their current position and they're better somewhere else. We don't really know. That's probably the biggest thing with a coaching change is you're going to see a ton of differences. You're going to see a ton of opportunities for guys to show that they're willing to help the team and see what they can do from there. So we'll see what happens with this group, but that secondary feels like it's in a good place, a group that could finish around the same that they did last year in terms of defending the pass. They have pretty good depth. They bring in good transfer portal talent, and it'll be fun to see how they elevate their game from there. Getting to a bowl game is probably going to be the goal for this team, and that would show improvement last year. Now, yes, you did go 5-6, and with how Liberty struggled last year, you might have won that game as well to get to a bowl game. I don't know if that was going to be enough to keep your coaching staff in place, but this year the schedule does bode well for them to potentially win those 6 games. Now, they do have a couple of big ones. You know, start the year with Charlotte, Lindenwood, and Southern Miss. And for the last few years, those would be 3 pretty easy wins for App State. Charlotte is going through a ton of change. So I think that's still very much a win for App State. Southern Miss is going to be much better than people, I think, realize. Charles Huff is a very good coach. He brings in a ton of talent from the transfer portal, including a lot of players from his Marshall team that he had last year. And it's a road game for App State early in the season. That'll be an interesting game. Not that there's a measuring stick game, but I very much would like to see how they perform there. You get a bye week before you have to go to Boise State. That's very much a tough one. Boise State is in the college football playoff last year, so obviously that's going to be what people talk about the most. They are without Ashton Genty, so we'll see how this defense holds up against Boise State's offense. Oregon State comes to App State. That is a very interesting matchup. I think that is a winnable game if everything's going well for App State, but Oregon State is definitely a tough opponent for sure. Georgia State is really trying to figure themselves out. Coastal Carolina could be in that same range as App State in terms of win total, so we'll see what happens with them. Old Dominion to me is a sleeper team in this conference, but I think that they're very much still on the same level as App State right now. We'll see at this point in the season. We'll know where both of those teams are at. Then you get a final bye week before a really tough stretch of Georgia Southern, a team that I think will compete for a Sun Belt championship this year. James Madison, I think, is going to be a phenomenal team. Marshall is going through a transition, so I don't necessarily have too many concerns for App State with that one. Arkansas State is another team that could have a big year as well. A very difficult offense to stop, and by this point, we're going to know if they're actually truly a very good team or if they're around, again, this same range. Right now, I have the ceiling as 8-4. That would be a great year for App State. 4-8 to me is the floor. That's if all of these transfers don't really work out. Nothing is going as planned. The channel is very interesting, very optimistic for this team. I think that they have a lot of high hopes for App State to get back on track. And honestly, the Sun Belt is better when App State is playing really good football. And we've seen that over the years. We've seen that time and time again, that when App State's playing well, they're a really fun team to watch, and people tend to tune in terms of the Sun Belt. 28% of you think they're going to finish first or second. 56% think third through sixth. So that's a large majority that think they're going to finish in the top half of this conference, which would be a good sign, a good indication of where this program's going. 7th through 10th, 6% of you say that. 11th through 14th, 9% there. So not as many people think they're going to finish at the bottom. I think a majority think they're going to finish in that 3rd through 8th or 6th range. So that'll be really fun if that is the case. This is a team, again, that has a lot of excitement, a lot of hope for this team heading into 2025. And there's reason for that. The new coaching staff is a big reason for it. And if they can meet those goals, if they can exceed expectations, you're going to feel like this team is back on track earlier than expected, but it also gets the fan base back and invested in a team that is really going to be fun to watch for the next few years.